Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beer and Money. My name is Ryan Burklo.
And I'm Alex Collins.
And on today's episode, we've got a returning guest. I don't think we scared him enough the first time around. He goes by Robert Bukacek, who is a financial advisor, but helps quite a few clients through the estate planning process. And that's the area of expertise that we want to make sure that we have the expert on to discuss that. And a lot of times as we're going and helping our clients through this, we get questions like, what does that process look like? So guess what? We're going to have that conversation today. We're going to talk about what does that process look like when you're looking at drafting your estate planning documents. But before we dive in, Mr. Collins, what are you drinking?
Well, we're getting close to the end of the year, so I am busting out the La Fin du Monde.
La Fin du Monde. That's my French accent, just so we're clear.
And this is it's just a great beer. It does pack a punch, so we'll see how well I do throughout the episode.
And I am drinking from Drew Brew. I'm getting ready for my ski season. It's about a month away where my family and we go skiing every weekend, and we always end up in Drew Brew to finish our ski day off. And I'm drinking Hop Session by Drew Brew, 5.1 alcohol. So it's actually a lower alcohol IPA. And that's all I got to say about that. Mr. Collins, cheers.
Cheers. I forgot to mention it. La Fin du Monde is a triple, and it clocks in at 8%.
8%, Rob.
I'm getting an education here. This is awesome.
So, Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be here.
So we didn't scare you enough. This time we aim to do so.
All right. I'm ready.
So
looking forward.
So in our first episode, we did a high level conversation around estate planning. Like, what is a trust? What's probate, right? Funding of trust. That's some more of the simple concepts there. But it can be scary to figure out what attorney you should sit down with and what is that even going to look like. And so we thought we would discuss what does that process look like with you today.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't start this process because they don't understand what it's going to take. They think it's expensive. They think it's, going to be arduous. So they just kind of put it off, and there's always tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Until there isn't.
Until there isn't. Exactly. Right. None of us know when it's our time. Right.
Well, and expensive and arduous compared to what?
Right. Yeah. Not doing it. Just multiply that expense and that arduousness. Is that a word? By 10. Right. But the thing is you're dead, so somebody else is going to handle it. So you're just gonna hand it off to somebody else. But I don't know. Maybe you care about those people. Maybe you don't. But if you do, I'd suggest do some planning. Get it started.
It's not just shaking up the box and then handing it over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here's my file cabinet. Good luck.
So let's dive right in here, right? So let's just start with, do you need a trust, Rob? I think that's a question that often gets tossed around. Do I need a trust? What is a trust? Like, we answered the what is a trust. Now the question is, do you need one?
Yeah, because a lot of people think, oh, I'm not wealthy. I don't have a big estate. I don't have a lot of assets. Like, that's for the rich people, right? Not even true. I mean, my thought on it is if you've got kids, if you've got a house, if you've got a business, you probably need a trust. Can you get by without one? Yeah, there's things you can do. I would, at the very least, say get a will to say this is who I want to get my stuff. And then if you don't own real estate, a business, you don't have kids, then a lot of the stuff you have, you can just leave by will or a beneficiary designation. If you got an IRA or a 401k, that avoids probate. Life insurance, same thing. Have a beneficiary. Now, I would say make sure you have a primary beneficiary and a contingent beneficiary, because maybe it's just you and your wife or you and your spouse. And you name your spouse as a beneficiary, and then you both Thelma and Louise off the cliff together holding hands, right? And now who's the beneficiary? Well, if you didn't name a contingent beneficiary, then the court's going to decide. So I would say just about everybody needs some sort of documentation for that eventuality.
And make sure, I should have started this episode with this, but go back if you're listening to this and this is the first, if you didn't listen to our previous episode on estate planning with Rob, check out episode 274. I think it's like 2 episodes, maybe even 3 episodes ago. Check that out because we did go more high level kind of basics of estate planning. Today's going to be slightly more advanced. So I think it's important for you to understand the basics before listening to this one, as Rob already started diving into those pieces. So, figuring out, do you need the trust? Like everyone should have some sort of estate planning document so that the state doesn't decide for you.
For sure. Yeah. And we talked about probate in the last
Yep.
podcast, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And that you just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But something a trust does that a will doesn't is a trust handles your stuff while you're still alive and not cognizant, without capacity. So if you're in a coma in the hospital, or you just disappear for a month or two, I don't know, you're in a Turkish prison, whatever, then having a trust and a trustee to make sure that your bills still get paid, your mortgage get paid, your taxes get filed, all that stuff. Will doesn't do that.
Maybe the trust can buy the cigarettes for you in the Turkish prison too. So that's something to consider.
Right? Send money to your account.
Bad personal experience in a previous life there, Rob?
I cover all bases.
CYA for you there.
Right? So, and we talked about this in the last time we met, having a power of attorney, right? So you could start out with a will, a power of attorney, and then that power of attorney could cover finances and can also cover your health, right? So you'd have a power of attorney for healthcare or a medical directive, something along those lines. And
so
that could cover things.
Right. So let's just say the need is there for trust or the estate planning documents. Like the next step is obviously to find an attorney, which not a lot of people actually know an estate planning attorney.
Right? Yeah. I'm going to date myself. Break out the yellow pages here. Where do I go? So here's the thing. Any attorney can draft a trust. Not every attorney should.
I about said, do you want any attorney to draft the trust?
Oh my gosh, I've seen some horrific trusts from real estate attorneys and family law attorneys. So you want an estate planning attorney. And typically advisors, especially advisors like us, we work with a lot of estate planning attorneys. We have experience with them. You might check out with, a family member who's done their planning and see if they have a referral for you. Problem with that is that family member probably only worked with one attorney. They have no comparison. They don't know if the attorney did a great job or a lousy job. They just know, hey, it was a nice guy, she was a nice lady, and we got a bunch of documents and we think we're set.
When their situation may or may not be similar.
Absolutely. Right? So there's different attorneys for different levels of wealth and planning expertise. You have some attorneys that just do the basics, husband, wife, kids, dog, cat, house, and off they go. You start getting situations where maybe you have a blended marriage, kids from previous marriages, multiple businesses, multiple properties in multiple states. Now it gets a little more complex. You want a more complex attorney. So
also the state that you live in matters a decent amount as well, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you got to start in the state you live in. So you definitely want somebody who is licensed in your state. And I hear that too. Oh, my cousin's an attorney in Colorado. I'll ask him. Well, your cousin in Colorado probably is not licensed to draft an attorney in Washington or draft a trust in Washington. So
each state has their own right, unique rules and laws. And, just because maybe they're well versed in Colorado in your example, doesn't mean they're well versed in Washington state law.
For sure. Could they do it?
But
maybe.
So, Rob, let's say that I owned property in 3 different states and split time evenly between those 3 different states. What state should I contact somebody in?
Well, the state you call your residence, and usually the IRS has the same opinion, right? Is wherever you're living more than 6 months in a day.
Well, if I'm not living more than 6 months in a day in any place, it would be like where I vote or something of that nature, right?
Sounds right. Yeah, that's what I guess. But then I don't know everything about the law about every state, so I'm going to ask an attorney, right? And let them determine where I should domicile my estate plan.
So this kind of takes us to, those are where to find attorneys, right? But either via referral from a loved one that you trust, or maybe a financial advisor or planner, someone that you trust that has a great referral network that they know who to bring in, right? Because as we've just said, not every estate planning attorney is created equal, right?
Yeah.
So
ask your tax advisor, ask your financial advisor.
So once we've found the attorney, then it's like, okay, well, now I've got to go talk to this attorney. So what should people be preparing for prior to meeting and sitting down with the attorney, or what should they expect? Maybe I should ask
pretty
that
scary,
way.
huh? You're going to go talk to an attorney, right? Yeah. Like that's usually never good news. So
I love it, actually. It's really I wake up thinking about it.
I have a lot of fun with attorneys. So attorneys are people too. Surprisingly, they joke, they laugh, they have a good time. They like people. Yeah, just like going to a doctor or something like that, you might get somebody who has no bedside manner. But, and that's where I also match up my clients with my attorneys. I have different attorneys that I use because they have different personalities. And I know what personality will blend with my client. If I have a very serious client, I'm not going to take him to an attorney that likes to joke and laugh, right? And vice versa. So, take him to
why would you want to have fun while dealing with this? That's stupid.
Yeah, we're going to go talk about dying. What happens when I die? Let's make the best of it. What do you say?
Dad joke. Kidding.
Yeah, dad jokes are flowing. So let you find the attorney, and now you got to go meet them. So how should you prepare for that meeting, right? And we already talked about this beforehand. We're going to talk about this in a future episode where I kind of break down how you can create your estate plan to benefit your circumstances, your situation, because there's a lot of different ways. But if you haven't had that conversation with me or with your advisor, and you're just going to go out there and DIY this with the help of an attorney, then you want to think beforehand. Okay, there's going to be a couple of people that are going to wear some different hats in my estate plan, and first and foremost is if I can't perform the duties, I can't manage my finances, who's going to take over for me? If it's a married couple, it's typically a spouse, right? It makes sense. Yeah. If that's not the situation, if you're single, or if one of you has passed away and the other one becomes incapacitated, then who's going to step in and manage your finances? So you want to think about, who do I trust to take over? Basically have a license to be me with all my finances, right? Access to my checking accounts, access to my retirement accounts, pay bills, be responsible. This person doesn't have to be totally financially savvy or legally savvy. I just want you to choose somebody who's going to look out for your best interest, who cares for you, and knows when they don't know it all.
Yeah.
Right? That's key. The person that thinks they know how to do everything and they don't need help, or they don't need to consult with a professional, is the last person you want to use, because those are the people that are going to mess it up. And then you want a couple people behind that on the bench, just in case that person's not able or that person doesn't want the job.
Yeah.
How deep of a bench do you recommend there, Rob?
I usually recommend at least you have 3 people on your list. Your first choice, your second choice, and your third choice. And you can have people that your first choice can serve alone, or you can have what's called co-trustees. So you have 2 people serving. And now that creates a little bit of accountability, because now 2 people have to make the decision about your finances. So you don't have just one person going, "Oh, I think we should do this. I think we should do this." I think you have that that check and balance, right? Problem with that though is that, well, that requires more people, and sometimes people don't agree. So you got co-trustees who don't agree with each other. Now what? It just becomes kind of problematic. So I typically say, hey, choose your one person, have a backup, and then have a backup to your backup. Okay.
So we got the person that's managing the finances, if in that instance of being incapacitated.
Yeah. Who's going to step in your shoes?
Yep.
Think about that. Right. And, let me back up a little bit, because I usually tell, especially like, a married couple, I tell them like, hey, this is a serious conversation. Like, no distractions. Go grab a bottle of wine. Well, this is beer and money. So go grab a couple of IPAs, go sit on the lanai and have a conversation. But, just a couple of IPAs.
That's a marketing idea for an estate planning attorney. Hey, when you do an estate planning documents with me, we go to Hawaii. We go on the lanai.
Yeah, exactly.
I like this estate. Why didn't I have that estate planning attorney for me?
We're going on
Man.
vacation. Yeah. You going on vacation? No, we're going to do our estate plan. Yeah.
If any attorney takes that and makes a crap ton of money, I want credit, just so we're clear.
I've got an attorney in Hawaii, so just letting you know.
Love it.
But yeah, but I warn them. I'm like, hey, just one bottle.
Yeah. No, you don't want to do too crazy. That makes sense.
Because then it just gets ugly, right?
Yeah.
So back to business. You're thinking about who's going to step in your shoes. Then you want to think about who's going to get your stuff, right? If you got kids, that's usually the obvious choice. But not everybody has kids. Not everybody likes their kids, right? Sometimes those evil little...
Well, and to your point, the blended families, right? The blended families make it, right? It's a different conversation every time with that.
Sure. Yeah. Blended families can definitely be tricky. And that's where a bottle, more than a bottle of wine usually gets ugly. So who's going to get your stuff? And like I said, if it's not kids, you might choose, extended family, brother, sister, mom, dad, nieces, nephews. You could choose charity. Who do you want your charity to be?
Yeah.
And now, if you're going to go down that route, you want to get the name, the legal name of the charity, and you want their tax ID number, because the attorney's going to need that information. Okay. For your kids, you should be prepared to have dates of birth. Obviously, their address. If they're adult children and not living with you, you want to have their contact information. And if they're adult children and they have spouses, right? Now you're starting to think about, okay, if I have grandchildren, right? Do I want to give something to my grandchildren? And there's something called generation skipping, which we'll get into in another time. But you might make a gift to your grandchildren. You might want to fund their college, something like that. Who knows? But you also want to think about, and I call this the catastrophic situation, right? The whole family is on the plane to Hawaii and it doesn't make it. Right? Then who gets your stuff?
Right.
And so you want to be prepared to answer that too. Okay.
And that gets interesting. I remember the conversation with my wife when we did this, right? Because we would have my parents and my brother, and she had her sister and her parents, and you're envisioning this horrible situation where the entire family, right? And yeah, it's again the backup to the backup.
I've actually had clients who said, "Yeah, we're like one of the kids and one of the parents gets on one plane, and one of the kids and one of the parents gets on a different plane."
Yeah, president and vice president never fly together, right?
Right.
Yeah, or if you're In-N-Out Burger, maybe not put everybody on the same plane.
Yep. Yeah.
Leave somebody on the ground. And if you're wondering what the In-N-Out Burger comment is, go look it up because it's a fascinating story. So if your children are beneficiaries, and not everybody makes it to the finish line. Sometimes kids don't make it to the finish line, right, before you die. So if your children predecease you, they pass away before you. I mean, we hope that never happens, but it does happen. And if your child predeceases you, who would get their share instead? Would it be their children, their issue, your grandchildren? Would you leave it to the sibling? I've got 2 kids. If one of them passes away, then I just want the other one to get everything.
What if they're married, and does it go to their spouse? Like,
And
there's all sorts of questions that get raised, right?
You could put that language into the documents, though, right? Like, it's interesting that you bring up children, predeceasing parents, because my brother passed away before my parents. My wife's sister passed away before her parents. And so, we are living, breathing, like we both have experienced that as siblings. Now you got the parents, right? And both of our parents had to go redo their documents, and you might have to redo the documents anyways. However, you could put language in the document as the backup, as you're describing there.
Absolutely, yeah. You can get pretty detailed in the documents. Now, if you get too detailed, it could make it too complicated for your trustee to kind of figure out. Or it could.
Yeah, keep in mind you're creating this document for someone else to follow.
Yeah. You may have it in your head exactly how you want it to go, but to make that all happen in writing and for somebody to actually comprehend it, that's another story. And the attorney might just like go, "Oh my gosh, really?" Like,
yeah.
Okay, let's just take care of 90% of what's possible, right?
Well, and like you wind up running into situations where it's like the document will say like, this child and any natural born child of mine, and then the document doesn't get reviewed for like 15 years and there's an extra 4 kids or whatever. Or like I've run into a situation where when we were reviewing a client's documents, everything was going to the ex-spouse. And it was like they hadn't, like, it wasn't like they'd been divorced for like a year or two. It had been like 10 years, 15 years. And we were like, "So who's this person?" And they were like, "Oh, that's my ex." Got it. I'm guessing you need to change your documents then, because like now everything goes to them. Oh crap. Yeah, we need to fix that like yesterday.
Yeah. Divorce, and this can be different state by state. I know here in California, if you get divorced, then any estate planning documents are null and void. So
that doesn't mean that beneficiary. That doesn't mean the beneficiary designations are null and void, though.
No, that's true, right?
This is where you need to match up the documents versus the designations that we're just talking about. So
yeah.
So Rob, we've talked about managing the finances if you're incapacitated. We've talked about like, hey, who do you want to get your stuff?
Yep.
And having backups to the backups. Is there anything else that someone should be, as a couple, what should they be talking about prior to sitting down with their attorney?
Well, thinking about this, like some people have children who probably should get a big bunch of money all at once, right? Maybe they're not responsible enough. Maybe they're just in a bad marriage, and if they get all this money and then get divorced, they risk losing half of it in that divorce.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're just really bad with money, and you need to kind of protect them. So you have to think about those possibilities, and you can write this stuff into the trust that just says, hey, if my trustee believes that my child has an addiction or a gambling problem or something along those lines. The trustee has the discretion to withhold distributions, right? You can think about stuff like that. If you have special needs children, if you have special needs children, there is absolutely no doubt you need to have a trust, right? So special needs children getting a big inheritance blows up any federal benefits they might be receiving.
Yeah.
So you want to protect them. So think about your situation. You might have young kids. We don't know how they're going to be when they're 18 years old. We all have grandiose visions of our, kids getting full ride scholarships to Yale, Stanford, whatever, right? But doesn't always happen. So having, thinking about those protections, you might want to put some language in your trust that says, hey, I want to motivate my kid if I'm gone. And in order for my kid to get money, they have to have a bachelor's degree, or they have to have a degree, or have a job. Like, they can't just freeload, kick back, and be the dude and get the money, right?
Yeah, the classic or stereotypical trust fund child, right?
The trust fund babies, right? And that's why people have this vision of you got to be rich to have a trust.
To have a trust, exactly.
Yeah. So you can kind of control things from the grave. So think about the things that you may want. I caution you, though, you might get too restrictive.
Yeah.
Right. So
when you get too restrictive, that can cause, that's where fights arise, right? Because one person. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There are people that get a couple of semesters into college and then have a great idea, drop out of college, and become billionaires. Right? Well, They didn't get a degree, so should they not get any of mom and dad's estate? Is that what you're saying?
Right.
So, yeah. So you could also say, hey, they have to wait till certain ages to get money. Think about that. What would be a responsible age? And that's where you kind of look back at your own life and go, was I responsible at 25, or was I responsible at 30? Was I responsible, or am I still not responsible?
Rob, how often should these documents be pulled out, dusted off, and reviewed?
I'd say every couple of years, or anytime some event happens. So you mentioned, Alex having children that weren't named in the trust. This happened to Kobe Bryant when he passed away. His youngest daughter wasn't in the trust, but every time he had another child, he went back to the attorney and added that child. Now he added each child by name specifically, instead of having language like any children born of this marriage or any child adopted, but something like that, right? So I question who Kobe's attorney was, but because that's usually some pretty basic stuff. I was surprised by that. But thinking about stuff like that, obviously an important thing. So
this process that the clients are going to go through, like this is where having a trusted individual on your side that's going to help you go through this process. Right, the estate planning attorney is the expert in drafting the documents, but may not be the expert in translation to the client so the client understands it, maybe, or B, guiding the client so that they actually take action, because maybe they get afraid for whatever reason, right? Because of how the attorney is either speaking to them or just the thought of signing a document, right? Like, this is where that person is integral, as well as having maybe the conversation that the three of us are having right now. Imagine having this type of conversation before even seeing the estate planning attorney.
Yeah, and
which is a huge value add.
I do with my clients.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like Alex and I do the exact same thing, and I think a lot of our clients have appreciated that. And then when they go in, when they're asked these questions, they're prepared and they're like, "Oh, this isn't as difficult as I thought it might be."
Right. Well, and I also see the opposite.
Here we go.
Yeah, that puzzled look on their face. And so I go to the attorney with my client.
Yeah.
Even if it's on a Zoom meeting or if it's in person, if I can do it in person, I'll be there with the client. So when the client is asking an attorney, the attorney is asking the client a question, I can look at my client and know, okay, are they understanding what the attorney's saying, or do they have a question? And sometimes I'll be just like, okay, remember we talked about this, this, and this, and you mentioned, giving it to Joey, and like that's what he's asking. Oh, okay. And it just makes the whole process so much easier, right? So we become the interpreter between the client and the attorney.
Yeah, it's just like when you go see your doctor and your doctor starts spouting off a bunch of stuff, and you're like, "What the hell did you just?" I'm just going to shake my head yes because I don't want to talk about this anymore.
Right? You're sitting there Googling terms on your phone.
Please hold.
Yeah. Hold on. I gotta know what you just said. Like, did you say that word again?
Hey Siri, what is?
Yeah. So the experience with the attorney, typically when the client goes to the attorney, it's you sit down in a room and the attorney might have an intake form for you to fill out beforehand, and the attorney's going to ask some of these same questions, like who do you want to be in charge of your money, who do you want to get your stuff, do you want them to get it all at once at 18, or do you want to stagger it out? And they'll ask general questions like that, and then they'll draft a trust based on responses to those specific questions. What a lot of attorneys won't do is say, hey, you have the option to do this, and this is what that could look like. Or you might think about this, and that's what that could look like. Right? Because the attorneys, I will say, they either work on a flat fee or they work on an hourly basis. I never go to an attorney that works on an hourly basis because I don't want my clients to be afraid to ask a question.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be the ding on the register. Right.
That becomes a problem. You wind up with a subpar plan because you didn't ask all the questions and you didn't seek to understand because you were too worried about the register
bill going up. Yeah.
100%. But on the flip side of that coin, an attorney that charges a flat fee is also going to try to get through that process as fast as possible.
Yep.
Right. So I don't want to say they're going to cut corners, but maybe they're not going to ask too many questions.
So both sides of that, again, is just reinforcing having someone there that kind of knows this process and knows what terminology, the definitions, and can communicate to the client or be that intermediary is invaluable.
Absolutely, 100%. And I will tell you, I've been in meetings where attorneys and clients couldn't come to an agreement on how they wanted to do something. It's not like an attorney's just going to do whatever you want to do. They're not scribes. They're not just going to write down whatever you say. They're going to have an opinion about it because they're responsible for that document, right? They have a legal obligation. So they may say, I don't recommend that. And you know what? If that's what you want, then I don't think I'm the attorney for you. And in those instances, having that third party there to say, well, wait a minute, here's something we haven't considered. Would this work? And then both parties kind of go, yeah, okay, that works for me. Yeah, that works for me. So I a number of times have come up with ideas that people just, they couldn't figure out what the answer was to, right? That question.
Yeah. So we've gone, this is, what the process looks like, right? And the more prepared you are going into the meeting and have someone by your side that has been through this, once or twice, or maybe a lot of times, it helps smooth this process so that, and this is the end, is action is taken and the documents are put in force and the trust is funded and all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I want to make sure we're taking care of each other's time here because I know, Rob, you've got, clients that you might want to help. So we appreciate you being on the episode here. We're going to record another one where we kind of go into the details of kind of a sample estate plan where Rob will walk through how that plan comes into place for the purposes of you understanding, you as in our listeners, understanding how this all kind of comes into formation. Which takes us to the question of the day, which Alex and I did not talk about. So my question that I'll have, since I just put Alex on the spot there, is For those of you who, 2 questions. For those of you who went through the estate planning process, did you have someone that walked you through it? And for those of you who have not done the estate planning process, what's holding you back? Head over to beerandmoney.net, and at the top of the page there's a contact us form. That's where you can either answer that question, or if you have questions for Rob or either Alex or myself, we can answer that question on possibly the next episode. So we hope this episode was valuable for you, and you are now leaning forward towards taking some steps towards your estate planning documents. So as always, Mr. Collins.
Cheers.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Park Avenue Securities, Guardian, or Quantified Financial Partners, and opinions stated are their own. Guardian, its subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. This material is intended for general public use. By providing this content, Park Avenue Securities, LLC is not undertaking to provide investment advice or a recommendation for any specific individual or situation, or to otherwise act in a fiduciary capacity. Please contact a financial representative for guidance and information that is specific to your individual situation. Ryan and Alex are registered representatives and financial advisors of Park Avenue Securities, LLC. OSJ 200 Market Street, Suite 1850, Portland, Oregon 97201. Phone number 503-221-1226. Securities products and advisory services offered through Park Avenue Securities, member FINRA, SIPC. Financial representatives of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Park Avenue Securities is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Quantified Financial Partners is not an affiliate or subsidiary of Park Avenue Securities or Guardian. Ryan Burklo, CA Insurance License Number 0K24924. Alexander Collins, CA Insurance License Number 0H24806.
7437849.1, expiration date December 2026.